Hi, this is Auntie Kay, and we are being joined here today by my friend Evelyna. We're both going to introduce ourselves, and today we're going to have another Oracles of Colonization chat based on the Oracle of Colonization, which is the extra 23 cards in the Land Back Tarot, and they are going to be Rise Up 11, which shadows justice, and 12, Know Your Enemy, which shadows the Hanged Man, which is going to be Dead Time. And I'm Krista DeMar Flute, and I'm a Codeine Cajun scoop survivor, scooped from Standing Rock to Kingston, Ontario, and I currently live in the Madawaskarini in Algonquin territories as a guest in my daughter's lands. And so Evelyna's, go ahead, introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm Evelyna Akoko K. I'm mixed race, black and white. I'm currently residing in Hamilton, which is mostly, I think, like Six Nations and like specifically, Huron-Wendat and Haudenosaunee and Mississaugas, and that was under the Mississaugas of the New Credit, I believe. And it's Hamilton. It's kind of a weird place. But yeah, that's where I'm at. And I forgot what else I was supposed to say, but oh yeah, I'm an activist, I guess, and a writer. And we've known each other for quite a few years, and this is super exciting. So here I am.
It is. And we met in Kingston, which is Gataragwe or Agadenagwig, and it is Huron-Wendat, Algonquin, Mississauga, and specifically Mohawk lands. And yeah, so, and we were involved in various activist stuff in that area, because there quickly became, around the time you were coming in, a lot of like affiliate organizing. So, you know, there was a lot of involvement, but I think more participation involvement and organization involvement because of that. So there was a lot of stuff.
Yeah, it was really wild. Like, yeah, we just got up to a lot stuff to do with Queen's University, so a lot of that, and then also stuff to do with just like colonialism in Kingston. So we were doing, and just but that's initially how we met. I think you were at a Sir John A thing, and you were really cool, and you were just burning him in effigy, and I was like, I need to meet that person. I need to. That's the person I need to meet. So then we met later on, and I was just like,
yeah, we did. At another protest too.
Yeah.
And there was a lot of colonial stuff going on in Kingston because it is the colonial state's first capital and the home of the first prime minister, who's like, he really takes the cake for colonial ideas. And if I'm going to sum it up, you know, applying to everybody who wasn't Aryan, he wanted an Aryan nation. And so Canada has a lot worth history in that time than people like to admit, talk about. And there's a whole lot of patriotism in that city specifically. It's known for it. It's a small city. Yeah, it is considered Canada's 8th most racist city. And I think people just think it's a small little old loyalist town. Like, well, what do you think that is?
Yeah, it's pretty fucked. And yeah, like the law
it's a very polite,
insane, like
it's a very polite, version. It's very polite.
Yeah, but it loses its politeness pretty quickly, as I'm sure you know.
Yeah.
Yes. And then suddenly, you know, they're literally telling you to go back to your country, and I'm like, you're literally, half the people here are Indigenous. So are you telling Indigenous people to go back? Like, that was the Canada Day thing. People were shouting that at, like, literally at like Indigenous people and like racialized like non-Indigenous people, and then a few white people, and it was just like, y'all this is literally not your land, but you're going to tell the people telling you that to go back to their country. Anyways, I love
Uh,
it. And I'm like, they were like, yes, when I said that. I was like, so you're telling the indigenous people here to go back to their country? And they're like, yeah, I am. I'm like,
yeah,
what part of indigenous?
yeah,
Anyways,
brilliant. They were
they're
brilliant.
very racist there sometimes. So that's, or a lot of the time, most of them, not all. There are cool people there, but those are mostly the racialized leftists there who are fighting to take down the state, not the people who generally live there, the white people there. Like, anyway, yeah, they really sucked. I don't know.
Yeah. When you went to Queen's University,
Yeah.
we're going to get to this, folks. Did you realize what you were coming into?
So I knew that Queens was going to be racist. I didn't know much about Kingston, but like, it's so, okay, so this is like the story of how I ended up at Queens, is that I was applying to schools. I saw like there were a lot of scholarship opportunities at Queens, and I was like, well, it's not the school I want to go to, but you know what, I'll just apply to, because like they even had one that was specific to like my high school, and I was just like, that's a huge advantage. I would be foolish to not at least apply because all these other kids are applying. So I applied, and then I actually got one of the scholarships, and I was like, oh no, now I actually have to maybe decide whether or not to go. And then, you know, the other schools didn't offer as much, but I knew that Queens was racist, because literally when I talked to my parents, my dad went, and he's white, like he knows that this is, you know, he knows Queens is fucked, I guess. He was like, anywhere but Queens though, right? And I was like, haha, yeah, anywhere but Queens. And that was like the plan. And then I ended up at Queens. And like when we went there, it was literally like, my dad always comments, he's like, there are more gingers than like he's never seen a larger congregation of gingers, because there are just so many white people. There are like more gingers. Also, one of my dad's prof friends from McMaster, my dad's not a prof, but he works at Oprah at Mac, but one of the friends there, he was like, oh yeah, Queen's University, yeah, that's the whitest school I've ever visited. And then he goes, except the University of Oklahoma. Not a good sign. That's not a good sign. So I knew it was going to be racist. I knew it was going to be racist.
Knew, because some folks come in not knowing.
Oh, I feel so bad.
But your parents were also activists back in like my early activist days too.
Yeah.
In like some of the same bigger stuff. So they, you know, had a concept probably more of don't believe that we have diversity shit.
Yeah, exactly. Because they were part of like, well, they were, and I was also sort of part of it as a kid, but Red Hill, like the protests to prevent the expressway, which ultimately failed, but that was actually like, there were 60 years of various groups trying to stop that expressway from being built, or 50 years at least, I think, maybe 60, but definitely at least 50 years. And it was like, so like this had been going since the 50s. So it's pretty impressive that people managed.
That's huge.
They did, and it wasn't the same people, because new groups kept forming every time, and some of the same people carried through. But it's like, and then with the time I was there, then Six Nations actually joined, so that was like really, and then we're leading it, and that was like, that made a really big difference. They built like the longhouse down in the valley. They had a sacred fire, and so their leadership, I think, was a really big part of like what was effective about the protests there. And that was a big part of my childhood, was just spent living or visiting the valley a lot for various like actions and stuff. So yeah, my parents are like environmentalists, like like anti-war
in a healthy way.
I would say a much healthier way than like, my dad's still a white guy. I'd say my mom is like, her formal job is as an environmentalist, which she gets very underpaid for though, because it's with Environment Hamilton, so it's all like piecemeal tiny bits of, but yeah, she's very, I think she's a very good example of like what an environmentalist can be when they're not actively invested in colonialism, because like some of the other people she has to work with in other organizations, like she's had to like fight with because of the kind of stupid ignorant shit they say, like, and like she has to be the one like calling it out every time, because like she's forced to like work with all these like faith groups, for example, that like like some of them have said some really fucking, like, she ended up getting in a fight like on an 8-hour car ride with some fucking like pastor or whatever, because he was trying to say residential schools weren't, they had good intentions, and my mom's like, excuse the fuck out of you, like, what? So that's the kind of shit though that's out there, and that's so
and these people say they can be allies.
Exactly.
These people say they can be allies.
Yeah, while you're
They
literally
like to say that.
that's the card. Yeah, because that's literally you're trying to claim to be and to like be involved in environmental struggle without like literally taking the lead from Indigenous people just makes absolutely no sense. Because, like that's who actually managed to successfully defend this land, and yeah, and just like sorry, I heard
Yeah.
and just like yeah, the and like who are actually like the ones protecting like 80% of biodiversity and protecting 80% of like land that is being protected. It's like the emissions are mostly from settlers, right? So it's like really foolish to then not be like actively learning from that and divesting from those kind of like settler institutions like the church, if the church is going to like fucking do this shit and like try to try to like be like
Yeah.
justifying genocide. Like
Yeah. People like to say, oh, but Nanu, I'm recording. Please be quiet or go play outside again. People do like to say that, like, oh, they use so much gas. But yeah, so snowmobiles and four-wheelers and stuff, actually you're using less gas using those to get around and do those things than you know, cars. And the methods that we used to use have been destroyed on purpose.
Yeah.
Or in their habitats. So you know,
yeah,
there's
it's
that. But yeah, less consumption. Yeah, all those things tie really into
yeah.
environmentalism
Yeah. Well, consumption's
and
great,
stuff
but it's
like
like
that.
it's just
All
when
right.
settlers try to like make it about like less consumption being like, you know, they try to make it about how you can individually like just like, you know, spend or not spend or like, you know, like you can basically you can like get your low flow toilet and you're like and they're like, oh, you can basically just like and be a vegan and then that's gonna solve it. But it's like, no, like without actually tackling the root causes,
Yeah,
nothing happens. So
they
that
don't.
individualist
And
shit's
they
not gonna work.
are highly participatory in capitalism, you know, and a lot of the solutions also require resources we don't see, like lithium.
Yeah. That's like the which requires like very like environmentally destructive mining practices, but also is literally like, you know, they're killing like indigenous people to do that. They're killing like leaders who try to oppose them. They're killing communities that try to oppose them. So I'm like, yeah, just
Yeah,
no mining, leave everything in the ground at this point because like we have better options and we would actually, you know, not if we would actually want to use them. It's just the settler state
yeah,
does not want to because then that would interfere with capital and like
yeah. It's interesting because, you know, if we listen to our allies and believe we can fight inside the system. Now, these folks,
yeah.
I think, you know, there's some awareness, probably a diversity of tactics since, you know, they're still in the crossfires. If we listen to these guys and believe, like, you know, we can just fight in the system, nothing happens. Nothing. And like,
Yeah, go ahead.
if we rise up,
I love that
something
card.
happens. But like a whole lot of us end up, you know, like with dead time.
Yeah.
And you might not at first, but the further up the line you go, yeah, or the harder in the sites you get,
Yeah.
the bigger the cracks you create,
The
you
more
know, you at best you end up here.
yeah. That's literally it, right? It's like if something is within the system, it can't change the system, right? So it's like if you're going along with what they say is acceptable, yeah, you're not going to face any consequences. You won't get arrested, you won't or very likely won't get arrested, you won't get, you know, you won't get jailed, you won't get like hurt, hopefully, but at the same time
But
then like what at what cost? Then nothing changes. So
yeah, then nothing changes. And there were statements made too, like there was things like during Idle No More, they said, you know, don't arrest people at protests, arrest them at home, right? And there's a
'Cause-
tactic now with like a lot of land back stuff, right? They almost everybody at some point, you know, if you have bail conditions, almost everybody is doing something that would break bail conditions if they had them. Almost every adult. Almost every adult is spending at least one day in their week where they would be breaking what are bail conditions. So if you're a land back person, you get slapped with bail conditions. So they can, you know, catch you and charge you with breaches and give you criminal charges not related to your land back work because they breached you when they caught you when you were outside that land back space or your home. You know, if you went out at night, if you had a beer, any of those things, and so many other regular smoking weed, which you know we're allowed to do now.
Literally
anything
legal now, but same with the beer. They'll still punish
because things that are legal become illegal under bail conditions.
Exactly.
And then they catch you for things unrelated to your land back work, trying to press wise make it look bad to even defend you, for your people to come defend you in the system.
That's really
and I would imagine that the same thing's going on in other like activist situations. And
like I know even like white activists who, but because they're involved with stuff like land back and with like actual like real struggles, they're also like getting those kind of conditions where like I mean, even if you think of Cedar and Hamilton a few years ago, like they got like put in jail for like a few months, or at least a month for sure. I think it was 6 weeks before they were able to like get released, even though they actually hadn't violated their parole. It was parole in this case, not bail, but they had not violated the conditions of their parole. But the Hamilton police decided that they did, based on them speaking publicly and saying, we need to learn how to defend ourselves. The police will not help us. That's all they did. They said that at a meeting.
So
forum.
Coco's been pulled up. Coco's been pulled up on bail 3 or 4 times now. Every time she didn't actually breach the conditions of her bail. And so they altered them so that next time that would be a breach.
So they keep shrinking it to trap her, right?
Yeah. But like she's in jail overnight through bail court, you know, which is Zoom courts and that. And so, you know, we know where it's heading. And something that folks outside of Canada, or maybe even in Canada, might not know is anarchists like Cedar, land back, and decolonial stuff and environmentalism are on the RCMP and CSIS, which is like the Canadian version of CIA, and FBI kind of rolled into one.
Agency.
It's
crap.
So that's their list for terrorism, along, of course, with Muslims.
Meanwhile,
and I don't know. Do you know if Black Lives Matter has been added to it?
I'm not actually sure.
Or was that too specific?
I don't know if they've added Black Lives Matter. I know there's been moves to do that before, but even if they haven't, we know that they're still surveilling like any activists within that who are
at the same extent.
So it's like, and they are still like going after them. They just might not have formally labeled it as that. I'm not sure about that. Actually, I have to check that after. But yeah, I know that like there still are, like, even if it's not, like, it's the same as like with all the police now having said like they weren't, you know, when Ford gave the police in Ontario, like the that they've already been exercising.
The police basically said, don't worry, white people, we're not going to start exercising it on you.
And it's and that's
we sure feel free to do it on everyone else now.
They even say like we're not, the Hamilton police are like, we will not be arbitrarily stopping. They all say we're not going to be arbitrarily, but it's never been arbitrary. And, like, talking about this with a friend, but it's never been arbitrary. because they have always been active. Like there is a reason that they pull you over. There is a reason they stop you. And that reason is racism and is white supremacy. And so they're like, like they do have a reason.
You're in their targets.
Mission, but it's not on a reason that I would accept, but it's a reason that to a racist cop or to any cop is, because they're all racist, is they're of course they're gonna see that as suspicious in and of itself. I mean, we've seen cops literally shoving like a 10-year-old off their scooter in Toronto for violating like the fucking like lockdown by playing outside at a park. Like this is not like, this is very, like they, of course they're gonna still target like any activists who are actually affecting the state in any way, right? Even if they don't claim it publicly, even if they're not gonna put it there on the list, and I don't know if they have, but yeah, of course they're going to target Indigenous activists and Black activists and Palestinian activists and anyone that is a threat to their order, essentially, right?
They will.
Yeah.
And people buy into it. People people who think they are or want to be the ally actually buy into a lot of that crap so much more than they think they do in so many ways. I'm gonna mention something here that you don't know about, but the like internet tarot world is learning about. There's this tarot Facebook group and YouTuber who's white, named Stormy Atlantis, who during the Derek Chauvin trial believes a Black YouTuber and tarot reader, Arcane Panda, a 24-minute voicemail white-splaining why that wasn't racism and why she sympathizes with the cop murderer.
Are you
and how and it gets worse. And this whole time she's like, but I'm your ally. Yeah, and she wants to have a talk with her on racism when when she teaches her in Black Lives Matter how to, do Black Lives Matter as it was intended without being divisive.
Intended, yes, of course. That's because it's not even centralized. That's the stupidest part. People don't get that. It's the same with when people are like, oh, Antifa. And I'm like there's no head of Antifa, there's no head of Black Lives Matter. There are local chapters that might be led by people, but even then, the movement is not about leaders.
And then other allies and anarchists today on Instagram was like, well, is land back stuff like ethno-nationalism? And there's things I need to understand about it. I'm like, you're either upholding white supremacy or against occupation.
Literally, I'm like, ethno.
Yeah, if you don't like how we
doing that,
things should go, you can go to, live somewhere else.
Yeah, if you don't like it, if you don't want to follow the people
occupation. White supremacy. You can't undo white supremacy while occupying. So
it's the same as the whole reconciliation.
I don't know if I ethically agree with this anti-racist, environmentalist, anti-patriarchal, wow, queer aware land back movement. I don't know if I can agree with those ethics if there's a nationalist concept in there. Okay, dude.
Your anarchy, my anarchy will be white supremacist.
But I'm your
bullshit.
Activist. And he's like, don't be calling me all this, don't be, well, I wasn't calling him something. He's like, don't be getting so aggressive and upset. And I'm like, whoa,
they always say
take
that.
some He's like, I was just this. I'm like, take some responsibility. They always say that because they always say,
asking questions.
On your side.
I'm just trying to learn.
I'm on your side.
On your side,
Don't push me away. I'm on your side. Don't push me away.
If you were on my side, you wouldn't be able to be pushed away by me being a bit rude to you, okay? If you actually care about these
Ultimately, those people land us here.
Yes, exactly.
Those people land us here.
Either by informing or just not being there to support, or there's so many ways that they do they might also sometimes they decide to take it upon themselves to do some really dangerous shit without warning, like, because it's often we're going to be the ones leading. We'll do stuff that's risky, but it's like if they decide that white person there decides to just be like, oh, I'm going to do this really fucking dangerous thing that's going to get everyone here kettled and arrested, that often also do, and then they're not going to face the consequences. They're going to be the first one out the door with the least conditions, right? And it's like you're going to get everyone else screwed over who didn't get to choose to take that risk. And it's like you have to listen to the people who are actually.
Honey, bring me that tablet right now, please. But close down to the main screen for a minute. It's an emergency. So we can keep going. Okay. Yeah, and then they're dangerous. They're dangerous. In fact, the situation I was just talking about, they're trying to shame the Black person, of course. I'm just gonna say that I will help when I will help. So, but yeah, so these people land us in all kinds of trouble when they say they're our ally.
Yeah. You can't say it. It's something you would have to show through your actions.
And that it's going to be okay and happy. When you say you're not their ally, they retaliate so badly. And if they don't end up in this literal jail, they put us in other types of jails, Facebook jails, social media jails, which impacts like our access to businesses and our ways of making money. And, you know, don't you dare rise up and fight it within the system. Don't question this system. This justice has a question mark. They're questioning it. Yeah. And like,
because like,
and then, so I remember what I was going to say. Then there's times where we are taking a risk.
Yeah.
Right. And they're showing up to support us. But the moment that risk becomes evident, they decide, let's let them stay in the lead. We won't get arrested and put ourselves in between because, you know, my job, my home,
Yeah, like,
like,
it would affect my life. It's like, yeah, it affects your life, right? That's
what I don't know what they think's happening when, you know, somebody in the household paying rent goes here.
Yeah, exactly.
Like they lose their apartment and like their whole family loses their apartment. Exactly. You know, or their best friend's family because they're renting a room there.
Yeah, no, exactly.
And it covers the like utilities.
Yeah, it's just like it's like always the people with the like the most privilege and like the least like to like, you know, it's the people who are like they're always the ones who are like the most cautious. I find, like, not always, but I find a lot of the time it's actually surprising, but not surprising, right? Like it surprised me at first. Yeah. I'm like, you're like, you have so little to risk here, but they always overstate the risk like so hard. And I've noticed that with a lot of white leftists who are like less like, or like what leftists in name, I would say they're not the ones who are actually taking risks and stuff. So I wouldn't really call them like, but they claim to be, they, you know, they read their theory and they take things, but they're very, very afraid to take any risks. And it's like, you're white, you're like you're not the one who's gonna take the greatest fall for this, but of course you're more concerned. You think you have more to lose,
but you are afraid,
valuable as it is, right?
You're afraid of and what's going to be lost in it, that they're afraid of losing it, they're actually unlikely to lose, and we are likely to lose.
Yeah, there have been so many times where people are just like like they're so like they'll be like so over the top, like, oh my god, are there gonna be police here? Like, are we gonna all get arrested? I'm like, for something that's very minor, and I'm like, really? You think that's like a have you been to like anything before? I don't know. But I feel like
here's a good protest to talk about where that was interesting. Oh, yeah. So the Canada Day Parade, where we walked from the bottom of the parade up, met the parade halfway through, and forced them onto half of the main road for the rest of the parade as we continued up.
That's so cool, yeah.
One of my biggest memories is in the first half of that, before we met up with the parade and the cops, a large number of people smiled at us, took our anti-Canada handouts, our burn this flag stuff,
Mhm.
and like then the emotion switched once the cops arrived. The
Huh.
response to our action switched. So when the cops, were you at that protest?
No, I wasn't. I was the one. I was at the one next year, but I wasn't at that one. No. I wish I had been. Though.
Ah,
It seemed like it was really effective. It made it in all this like I saw it everywhere. Like people were really like. I mean, of course, you know the settlers were very hateful towards it, and like, oh, they're like they threatened children and stuff. It's like, no, they fucking didn't. But maybe like bring
nobody
your
got
child to a
hurt except
celebration
for
of the settlers' kids.
protesters who were like stomped by, cop horses
Yeah,
and had broken toes and, bruises
they don't
and,
see like they don't see
yeah.
it like that
The
violent. They don't see
cops surrounded a
like he was wrong.
person. Yeah. The cops tried to surround a person in the wheelchair, and the other protesters are pushing their way in between the wheelchair and the cops. And, people are like, they're resisting. It's like they're
Oh my God.
protecting somebody.
Yeah, and there's nothing wrong with resisting either. Like that's the thing. The
No,
fact that it's a
nothing wrong with
like
resisting.
because the fact that you can be arrested for resisting arrest is so like that can be your only charge, and then so many people saying that's their only charge when it's like, but you're resisting an unlawful
Yeah.
arrest, and even if it were lawfully, like it's still you should resist. You should resist because it's still even if it's lawfully right, it's not morally right what they're doing, right?
You have to be, you have to hold, if you hold privilege, you can afford to resist arrest
Exactly, and that's what I always like.
because you will be released. You'll be released, and with with bail or without bail, probably
Yeah.
without bail. And and a lot of times your first few arrests you will be too, depending on how small it is.
Yeah. No, my dad actually he used to get arrested, and I don't think he has a single charge like that actually stuck. Like they dropped every charge against him over the years, and that's because he's a white guy, and that's why he was willing, but that's why he saw it as his duty to actually risk arrest, right? But I'm like, like that's the fact that he was able to get away with that. Meanwhile, Coco is like how old? Like my dad is like 50 something now. No, he's turning 60 even, and like
Coco's
Coco's like
20.
20-year-old, and Coco has had multiple like actual conditions, actual bail, actual like charges that have gone
Yeah.
through that have been used
Yeah.
against. Meanwhile, like my dad can do the same kind of shit, but as a white guy, and he got, he did get arrested, but at the end of the day, he was always able to beat those charges because of how he's seen compared to how
Yeah.
she's seen, right?
And
And
her first one, she was defending a homeless guy. This is why she's a sketch. She was defending a homeless guy that some drunk white guy in his 20s over 6 feet was picking on. And so that drunk white guy over 6 feet got in a fight with her. She was 15,
little
like
tiny,
80 pounds, tiny.
I remember how tiny
Yeah.
she was then.
She was like 5'1",
yeah.
and she's only 5'3" now.
Oh,
And
she's so brave.
and
She's
he
like,
had her in a bear embrace, and she managed to get a 1-inch pocket knife out of the waist of her jeans and stab him in the arm, and he released. And they said it was an unfair fight, so she was the one who was charged.
unfair.
But like,
it's unfair. It's unfair that this 5'1" girl being grabbed defended herself with a tiny little fucking pocket knife, but it's not unfair that like a 6 foot something drunk man assaulted her, like, and grabbed her. Like, okay. Yep.
yeah, she was found guilty.
Yeah. Like it's just so like,
Yeah.
like the fact that she was a minor alone should have been enough for them to be like, this man should have no business being near her or touching her. Like that should, if
Yeah,
in a
and
reasonable,
she did not look 15. She looked like
so little.
12.
I know.
10.
Like that's literally, this man was like, I'm gonna fucking assault a child because she's standing up to me for like harassing and like threatening a homeless guy. So I'm gonna just be a terrible person. And then he faces no consequences other than, a little wound in his arm. And this child has to face like the full weight of like the legal apparatus. Like that's, fuck that. Fuck that.
Yeah.
And so that's like I think like it's so hard to get so many people to understand, but it's like legality has nothing to do with justice, and this system is
Yeah.
inherently unjust, and that's why. And so people like the whole category of criminal, that people will be like, oh, or are they a criminal? It's like, that's not a fucking real thing. Like, you grow up, you're an adult and you believe that criminal is a coherent category of being. Really, you think that that's like, it's a literal
Yeah.
fiction, it's a creation. It's a fucking, like, the
It
state makes
is.
that up. They decide who's a criminal and it changes. It's arbitrary. The fact that, you would be a criminal 5 years ago for smoking a joint, and you're to anyone who's caught doing that could technically become a criminal, and now that's not a crime, except for, of course, with bail. Then it's like that proves how arbitrary this shit is. And people would have, and just 5 years ago, it's like, oh, he had marijuana in his system, would be a justification for a black guy getting shot to death by cops because, oh, he had weed in his system. Like, and people still will say that even with it legal.
They'll
And like,
still say it today.
they still say it because it's like,
Yeah.
but you should be able to see from
Yeah.
that, be able to infer from the way that laws change constantly and people become
Yeah.
criminal. Or
Well, you can
lose
still
criminality
be
overnight. Like,
criminalized for weed today
Yeah.
because it's got to be the government's corporate weed,
and so all the people
and
selling it
there's
are
res
like,
weed, which people are getting away with in some
Yeah.
places. They're taking that a bigger level, but
yeah.
yeah,
But yeah, like individual like dealers, right? Like,
yeah,
they're at risk.
your
It's
neighborhood dealer, yeah, is largely black and brown, are getting bigger sentences now. They're getting largely federal sentences
Yeah,
instead of
it's actually
provincial.
worse now for them than before, like,
Yeah,
legalization. Yeah, and that's like,
yeah,
and
because now you're
because
taking
now
from
they
the
can profit.
government.
Now you're interfering with government profit, so it's even worse than
Yep.
before. Yeah, that's like, and that's the thing. Yeah, like every like so yeah, you can like literally like, what about that former fucking cop who owns like that dispensary, like who bought that dispensary like in like Kensington Market, right? Literally spent 23 years of his life fucking like sending people to jail for, and like arresting people and sending them to jail for weed, and now gets to profit from it. And he's not a criminal because he's a law-abiding citizen,
Yeah.
opening a business. But my friends who sell like
And
a
how
tiny bit of weed on the
gentrified
side
is
would be going to
Kensington
jail for it.
Market?
Hmm?
And how gentrified is Kensington Market?
And that's like literally, it's so, because it's still, there are still parts of it that are like relatively, it's still gentrified, but it's still like, it's one of the less expensive areas still in Toronto, which is the scariest part. So like, even so, there are more, like, I know people who are still able to get like relatively good rent there, but it's like, they're gonna get pushed out because now Kensington Market's it's so desirable and funky, right? For like white people to go enjoy.
It's a long process. It's a long process. Yeah. When I left Kingston, I was hanging in, and we'd moved a whole bunch of Native folks into kind of slummy apartment building, but that's what we could afford. But it was like, there is few buildings left in that neighborhood that like I'd raised my kids in, that hadn't been gentrified.
Yeah, and mainly by students, right? But like
mainly, well, first by students and white lesbians.
White lesbians, gotta love them.
Yeah. And then those students, bought homes and were cooler than their conservative parents because they were neoliberals, and so they improved the trendy neighborhood even more.
Neighborhood improvement, yeah, beautification. Oh God. Well, that's even like, that's happening with like in Hamilton, of course, same deal, right? It's like really like the prices are like I can't even convey, like you could like, like 20 years ago, like $300-$400 apartment, that's like, you could get an actual like apartment with like more than like one, like not a bachelor, like an actual apartment, maybe 1-2 bedrooms. And now it's like it's cheap that Ray and I are paying like $600 each for our apartment. And that's considered cheap now in this area, which is like one of the poorest neighborhoods still. And I'm like, yeah, or even housing prices. Like my parents were able to, they don't like own their home outright because they have a mortgage, but they were able to like make a down payment on a house because it was so cheap in that neighborhood when they did. It was like, and now the prices have gone up from like I think like they've soared by like 7-8 times like higher now. Like it's gone from like under 100,000 to like 500. 600,000.
back.
So
Yeah,
like,
that
you know,
neighborhood was
they're
like
more
that
like they're
too.
like lower middle, like they were low income as when I was a kid. Now they're like right below middle class, but I would say middle class. And
I'm going to go pee, Mama.
they wouldn't be able to move anywhere else in Hamilton now. Like they literally they've looked into it because they were like, maybe we can sell our house. It's kind of falling apart, and maybe someone will, like some rich person can buy it. It's a good price. We've got it for way less. We could maybe get out of here, rent somewhere. But like there's nothing that would be like affordable to leave, so they're literally just like, we're just stuck here, I guess, like, which I'm glad we have a place, but like, yeah, that's how quickly it's like. And even so, it was happening before then, and like we see with like Lock Street in Hamilton, like that used to be like a rough area, and now it's this little beautified, like you can't, it's a place where you wouldn't be able to buy your groceries, get a haircut, or do anything that's like other than like shop at little boutiques basically, like, and go for food. Like,
But they don't start that way.
No, they
Yeah,
don't.
like
It doesn't.
my old neighborhood had hairdressers, laundromats,
Yeah.
little restaurants, all kinds of, you know, nail plates, all kinds of little places, barbershops,
Yeah.
place to go pool. But like the people who gentrify it, they're not actually going to those cute little shops because they're not what they want. They don't want the, like, you know, deep fried fish on the corner and stuff.
No.
And they definitely don't want the laundromat.
No, they do not.
And so all those places, yeah.
Oh, of course,
Yeah.
they've got laundry in their home. Why would they need that, right? But we don't want people loitering. Like that's the whole thing. God,
And then, you know, people rise back up, which we saw in Kingston, because during the gentrification, the gentrification ghettoized the northern part of the old poor neighborhood. And so then, you know, they started pushing on that ghetto part of the neighborhood, and I've heard students and stuff are moving into it, and I moved my kids out of it into that crappy slum apartment. But you know, the symbol of them moving beyond and into the ghetto was when they put up the Elm Street Cafe.
Elm Street.
And
I don't know, but
it got attacked, and the windows kept getting smashed.
I do remember that place. Oh my god.
Yeah, and graffiti kept getting written on the wall, and they're like, we don't understand. We're a
where's all this
community
hate
in the
coming
neighborhood. Where is this coming from? It's like, you shut down these people's like last effing good laundromat for your $10 Sammys. They're pissed off, and you don't want them in your cafe.
Yeah, exactly. They literally, like they think about how many places go like cashless, right? To like literally keep out anyone homeless, anyone who doesn't have a bank card and a bank account. Like, that's such a common
and
topic.
for the places where, like, you know, parents used to take their kids on like baby bonus day, and like, we're going to take you out, buy lunch, big thing in the neighborhood. You know, all the places are disappearing. $10 Sammys at a place that doesn't want you and your kids. Like,
it's not.
And people are like, I don't understand why there's so much hate.
Well, that's
and they were like,
Street people do that.
Yeah.
Shit.
But you know, the neighborhood was like mad. Like,
the neighborhood fought back.
Yeah.
Amazing.
The neighborhood fought back.
Yeah,
this
like
place
that was
is
like
still there.
Went through like Lock Street and like smashed windows and shit, and everyone was like, "Oh my god, this terrorism!" Like, and they were all like, "Love Lock, like stronger together." All these fucking hashtags, and they all went shopping to like support it. But I'm like, but like for other people, I think it did. I think a lot of people dismissed that as being like bad tactics, and then a lot of people also thought I was part of it, but I wasn't actually, because I didn't know about it really. And I had an alibi.
Were you in Kingston?
No, I was in Hamilton, but I was at McMaster painting a banner for a banner drop the next day. Well, and then we were, but the thing is, we were in a classroom the entire time that we kind of like snuck into like after hours to use it as a space. We accidentally, the paint went through the fucking banner, so we ended up having the message on the ground as well. And it was like, but it was like we managed to mostly clean it, but we were like, oh shit, we gotta hide, we gotta run. Then we went and smoked weed, then we got chased by some security guards. So all this stuff happened that I'm like, technically we don't have a very good alibi if they try to say we were at lock, but also like there are
You do
security
have one.
I'm sure that caught us. We'll be out of that because we were doing another illegal sort of thing. It's fine. Like, but yeah, I would have.
Yeah.
I think it's something I supported though. I was like, that is like it's necessary to like actually like. It did get people to actually have to then like think about like what is the issue, and then it did like force people to like some people I think actually learned from it. Other people just doubled down on their like, oh, like, you know, the poor small businesses that were attacked, most of which are like run by some pretty shitty people. I'm gonna say like a lot of like almost I can't think of a single like small business owner off the top of my head who I know who is not like exploiting their workers like horribly and also being emotionally abusive to them. So I'm kind of like, I don't really fucking care about small businesses.
And living in really nice homes.
Yeah, exactly. Paying their workers minimum wage and under the table. And sometimes not. And just
and they make so much of their money disappear, they can convince themselves, oh, I actually only made this much.
Yeah.
It's like,
yeah, because you have to pay your rent on your expensive storefront to like keep making profit. Sorry that costs you money, but all of us also have rent, and we're not making a profit off of the place that we're renting. We're just living there and trying to survive. So, like, I'm not super sympathetic to that.
I'm not.
The worst bosses I've ever had have been small business owners. I'm just gonna say, like, the worst ones.
Yeah.
Even worse than the corporate ones. Like, because the corporate ones, at least they're not like they're just shitty to you and shamelessly exploiting you, but they're not like also trying to call you a family. You know, I'm like, don't call me your fucking family when you're exploiting me. Like, that's my biggest, like, I cannot fucking stand that. I cannot.
And your opportunity to get things like, you know, benefits and stuff within a small business is like, it's fucked.
Yeah. Like, you can't get anything.
Yeah.
Because they use the excuse of being a small business and how they're struggling and barely getting by. It's like, well, how the fuck do you think I'm doing? Working for you, you're at least making an actual like profit. I'm making like the little crumbs that you're throwing at me while saying I'm not worth those crumbs. So, and that was literally my
like, but I deserve it.
I'm like, well, then fire me.
And they think they deserve it.
So clearly I am. Sorry. Anyway.
Yeah. And they think they deserve it, but like co-ops prove otherwise. You don't. Like, you don't, because things don't actually need to be run with a boss. You could actually run things equally and take on an equal amount of responsibility and trust the people you're working with and make the same amount as them.
Yes.
And have to live in the same type of home as them.
Yes. But no, because
and live the same lifestyle as them.
Yeah. And then you care a lot more about making sure that people have benefits and are paid enough because it's also you, right? But that's the thing, they don't want that, right? It's the same with housing though. It's like there's no justification, I feel like morally for like being a landlord. Like, people will be like, oh, you know, they only rent like you know, they only have a few units or whatever. But it's like, okay, so then make that a co-op then. Like, if you actually care, if you're really like about that shit, really, like any leftist,
they're like, well, poor people
landlord,
don't care about their homes. Poor people don't care about their homes. They don't look after them. They don't have the money for all the things you have to upkeep a home.
Yeah.
That, you know, people put a lot of money into doing. They don't have it. And two, because you don't care about putting that into their homes and making sure those tools and supplies and everything else that you don't think of as a cost that is, like, from good vacuums to shop vacs to all those things. You know, like, they're not going to look after it because you don't care enough to make sure that it's looked after either, and you actually own it, and they actually can't.
And where should they look after?
And you just don't get it.
Benefit, right?
And so then it doesn't feel good, and so it just becomes like, fuck this. Why? And like,
if people don't damage things that they actually like can have ownership over and like and not be like kicked out of at any time. That's the thing. If you're when you're always on the verge of being removed, it's like any improvement you do, it's just going to be used by the landlord to jack up the rent for the next person, right? So it's like, and they're still going to do it either way, but like why do renovations for them? Why make things nice for them when they're literally just going to use it after they pushed you out to charge more? And I've known so many people that's happened to where their landlord let them paint the place nicely,
Yeah.
them put in some appliance, and then they just kick them out, rent evict them, and then they don't actually make any
Because
changes.
they get this idea all of a sudden of, oh, I could do this to all my places.
Yeah, and make some more
Thanks.
money.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly the fucking So I'm like, if you're a leftist, don't be owning shit. That's my thing. Like, if you're gonna own it in cooperation with others, so that you're not like profiting off of their labor, like, and their lives. Like, you're just asking people to give up.
That's why we're trying to set up a land trust, so it can be collectively unowned.
That's so cool.
And held in trust. It's a step. It's not decolonization.
No.
And decolonization has to happen, but I'm hoping it gives space to experiment with ways to get there.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Because there's no way to do it without actually, you can't, it's the same with like any kind of stuff. Like you can't individually decolonize, right? Because that's, you can decolonize your mind maybe, but you can't change the material conditions on your own. That requires us to actually overthrow these systems, right? So it's like the most you can do is like do the, to prepare for that and to learn and to fight towards that, right? Because we gotta fight towards that. Like that's got to be the goal at all times. Otherwise, it's like, what are we fighting for?
Yeah, but it's still cool to put land into a land trust where it's not going to gain capital too.
Yes, I really think that's very cool. That's so cool. Everything you've been doing has been really cool, actually. Like,
but I think things like that, where like you're working it in the system, like it has to be understood that it's not a solution.
No, it's a temporary thing that you're doing to get to the next point. Maybe,
it creates it creates some space to to do that.
Yeah,
because we need to figure those things out sometimes.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's just like we can't do it in one night, but it's like that has to always be the goal. And it's like we can't be like, oh, we've unionized the workplace and gotten benefits, so we're done now. Like no more issues, no more protesting. Like it's same with this. It's like it wouldn't be, none of it's enough unless like it's actually moving towards this and not just accepting that as enough. We should never accept something as enough that isn't the complete dissolution of this system and indigenous like autonomy. So gotta overthrow it all. It's the goal.
We have to figure it out.
We really
we have to figure it out in like good ways too. Because we have to figure it out in good ways. I really believe that we need to figure it out with other world indigenous folks who are displaced. Because displacement is like something not done by choice. And it's it's often about escaping being placed like still somewhere under the oppressor's harm, just not where you're from. You're being moved by the oppressor, and it's not necessarily safe.
Exactly.
And sometimes it was never safe, and it's all of it.
Like a Black person, even if they move to Canada, is not safe in Canada, right? Like, so even if they did voluntarily go there, which is still the result of like all these centuries of colonialism that make somewhere else inhospitable, right? Whether they're coming from like West Africa,
I think that's part of where it's getting it.
Trinidad,
you're like moving out of there from stuff that like Western society is still doing to you. To the safe places of Western society,
also
you're likely gonna get shot on the street.
Exactly. So there is nowhere safe to go. But not by little flag. The number of fucking people, like the number of every cop has it on. I'm like, Of course you do, because that's what all of them are. It is just the reality. It's funny that they don't even they wear it so proudly that they're like, yes, I'm a white supremacist. Like they're not even trying to conceal it with diversity and shit at that point. But I'm like, oh my god. Although sometimes they claim they don't know what it's like about or whatever. Like I had this one cop do that where we were calling him like a white supremacist at this thing because he's wearing that flag and he's literally, you know, protecting white supremacy as a cop. And he's like, what do you mean like I'm a white supremacist? I was like, you're fucking like you're literally wearing a Blue Lives Matter fucking patch. So that's like that's already pretty irredeemable. That's like an actively that was created specifically to mock Black Lives Matter and to literally like it's an antagonism towards Black Lives Matter. That's where it came out of. And the thin blue line has always been racist. And he's all like, oh, I never knew that. And then he's like comes up to me after he like finds me in the crowd. And I'm like, what the fuck now? And this guy tries to ask me out to like talk about it more. But he tries to ask me on a date while his friends are hitting my friends, while I've been shoved by a cop, while like we're like fighting them. And he's trying to ask me out. I'm like, no! Obviously no! Like what? But the fact that he could think this white, and the audacity of this white man, of course, this cop, because he thinks that he actually could do that because he doesn't see that we're fundamentally in opposition, right? Hello, I'm ally. Yes, I want to learn more about why my insignia is white supremacist, but I'm not going to stop being a cop. So, yeah, ally.
I didn't even read what these were about in the book, but this is a good conversation, so we're just going to keep going.
Yes. There's so. I mean, it's just so like you. Yeah, like 'cause I had a few times where cops, like most of them will be actively antagonistic to me and to other protesters, especially when it's land back or anything like Indigenous or with Black Lives Matter. But it's like once in a while, there's always one who's trying to be friendly with me, right? Often it's a racialized cop. This was like unusual, and then he had other intentions there. But it's like generally it's racialized cops who try to be like more friendly with me, and I'm like, well then quit, because like you know, like I'm like I can't tell you all I can say to you is like, you know, if you don't realize that what you're doing is like upholding white supremacy and capitalism and colonialism and like and homophobia and transphobia and every form of oppression, if you can't see that, then like please try to see that, because if you could see that, you would not do this job. But if you're not able to, or if you see it and you don't care and you're okay with that, so it's, or you actively support it. But it's like some of these cops would be like, oh, you know, I sympathize with you guys, and like I know you have a good, but we still have, and I'm like, so the but just negates all of that. Like but we're still gonna stop you, but we're still gonna arrest you, but we're still gonna prevent you from doing the things that you're doing, even though I support what you guys are doing. It's like, so you're not supporting it. And you can't support it by virtue of being a cop, even if it's you as a person without your uniform on would support it. But you, as the moment you're a cop, you give any personal morality that might be contrary to policing, you're putting aside. Sorry, my cat's up here. You got to see her. Moki.
Oh, Moki.
Moki. You met Crystal? Hello. Sorry, so that's my little baby Moki, the love of my life. We found her last year, and she's a tiny 3-week-old baby, and she's so cute. Anyway, sorry, back to the cops. So cute. But she's so cute. She's a little anarchist.
I have a question for you.
What's up?
I have 2 questions for you. We're going to get to why justice is your favorite card, but have you or anyone do you think you or anyone you've known has ever been like somebody's undercover tried to date them, or do you know anyone that has happened to? I don't know
for sure. I'm sure it has, because it happens all the time, but I don't think it's happened to me.
Yeah.
It's not happened to me because I'm not.
Do you ever question it? Do you ever question when you like meet people?
Sometimes, yeah. Like if someone tries to become my friend who like on Facebook or something, who like doesn't have, or like at a protest or something who I don't have any other connections to, I'm always gonna check with people like, yo, do you know this person? Because often like, and I've had a couple times where someone's even just on Facebook, you know, just tried to add me, and that's not as big as the in-person ones, but it's like they'll try to add me, and I'm like, and a bunch of people, I'll have a bunch of mutual friends, so then I start asking every one of those friends, well, how do you know this person? None of them actually know them. They saw they had mutual friends. And so that's like very risky. So that definitely happens a lot. And that's sometimes it's cops, sometimes it's right wingers. Sometimes I don't even know who it is, but that happens a lot online for sure. So people need to be way more conscious of that, I think. And then like, and then also, yeah, like I think in person, I know I've seen for sure like some really obvious undercovers before things, trying to talk to people and stuff and trying to talk to me. And I'm pretty good at sussing those ones out because they're so obvious. They're like white guys, they look awkward a bit, like they're very like they wear in a baseball cap maybe or some shit that's trying to make them look casual, but it just looks off, right? Like, and those ones I can tell very easily, but I think there probably are people who are much more subtle at it who I'm not able to pick up, right? And that's scary. So you should always, it's important as an activist, you know, you have to have people vouching for you, and that's what, like, people also have to vouch for me, right? So like if I don't have anyone who can vouch for me in a situation, like that would not be a good sign about me, I think, right? Like you wouldn't want, you should, you know, it's sometimes
every now and then I post on Facebook saying I will say whether or not I vouch for people if I'm asked by a marginalized person.
Exactly. I will always say, like,
I will give all my thoughts.
Yeah. And if I'm not 100% sure, even if someone's been my friend and I'm like, and I think they're cool, but like, say someone's asking like, oh, would they be like, you know, should I include, if I don't know for sure, I'll say like, look, they seem really cool. We've hung out before. We've had fun together. However, I don't know for sure. So like, I can't tell you definitively that this person is like safe. Like I can't do that they're not up to something, or that they're not going to hurt you in some way, or that they're not a cop in this case, right? It's like, if I can't tell you for sure, I'm not going to claim it's true, right? So even if it's someone I actually think is really amazing and I'm like, I would like to be their friend, but if I don't know for sure and someone asks me, I'm not going to say, oh yeah, they're great, because maybe they're not, like maybe I'm being fooled, right? So even if I think they're cool, I'm still going to disclaimer it if I don't know for sure that they're like legit. I'm still going to disclaimer, but I don't have any, like, they could be, I don't know, right? And I don't want to be creating a culture of fear. Like, that's not like my goal here. It's just like, I can't 100% vouch for someone, be like, yeah, I know for sure that they're not and that they're good. And like, I'm not going to say.
I think vouching for folks and thinking like how and where you know people from and who they're connected to is the safe way to go about it, where you don't have to go around questioning people all the time.
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like, we shouldn't have to be questioning.
But then there's other ways too. Like there's all those sort of obvious ones, but then, you know, we talked about earlier, the ones who are like, I'm nice and I want to be your ally and I'm a really good person, and they're
not a cop, but they're
not unpack their white supremacy.
Yeah. And that's a really, that one I've had a lot. And like I've had some success shifting people like that if there's someone I decide it's worth the time, but sometimes they're just not, and it's like a lot of the time they're just not, and it's just cut them loose. But even like I've had that where it's like someone who I've met them, they seem really cool, like we hung out a few times, and then like they'll drop like like one friend, I had a friend who like I was at we'd met at like just like at the mall, like because she worked at this one store, and we were just like, we ended up like chatting there, and we ended up hanging out, and we had like some friends in common, and it was like, oh, cool. So we're like, and then we were hanging out one day at Tim Hortons, like a few times into hanging out. And this one guy, and I think he's like an unhoused guy, he lives in Kingston. I can't remember, I don't know his name, but he often came to protest. So he came up to me and was talking about a protest that I'd been at involving a flag burning and stuff. And we were just both being like, yeah, that was cool. And then after like this guy leaves, my friend's like, I don't know if I agree with that, like burning the flag, like that seems like to be like, you know, that's really disrespectful to Canada. I was like, oh, honey, we were about to get into it, because, and like
there's
like,
some
it
stuff like
years
that,
for her to even be able to start like, and I've always kept her at a distance for that reason, although I really like her, just because like I was like, you have never been fully able to like wrap your head around Canada is evil. Like she's able to be like, Canada has problems, like, and that's, and I think like it's there've been improvements. Now she's not like, oh, flag burning is evil, but I'm still like, I don't know where she is now, because we haven't talked actually in like a year, but like, and maybe that's why, right? But that's the kind of thing where it's like, even though someone seems cool, they're queer, they're like, they've got like lefty politics, they're like, they'll post good stuff mostly, but then something like this where it's like, I thought that would just be self-evident.
I'm going to.
Great.
I'm going to.
And people hold on to the country. They get very tied into these particular identities, national identity, and like, and like racial identity, even though they won't recognize themselves as having one as white people, a lot of them, but they do, and they are very invested in it, right? And so like they don't realize
Very.
stuff comes up, and I don't realize until it comes up either. But then it's like, of course they are, because they are white and they were raised into this.
And then it really does come to how are they going to respond to that?
Yeah.
And you know, I found that like when I'm really bluntly truthful, they get it.
Yeah.
And they're either still offended or they're going to figure it out.
Yeah.
And realize like, holy shit. I'm like, holy shit.
Yeah.
And
you gotta say it.
I found that those are the people who are going to actively and physically support rising up.
Yes.
And the other kind never do anyway. So
what's the point? Yeah. They're not going to be there anyway. So like, there's not much point to like I'm like, you know, I'll try if I think the person's worth it. Sometimes I'll try even if I don't, but it's like at the end of the day, no one is obligated to try with someone like that who's not getting it. And I think also, yeah, like being harsh, like people get so like, oh, you're going to lose allies and stuff, but it's like, sometimes that's what needs to be done. And that is, and if someone really is about it, they're going to listen. Like and I think of myself in grade 12, like the first time, and I think the only time someone had to really harshly call me out for something, but it was fat phobia, right? And ableism in a post, because I shared something that was making fun of like Americans for being like, and I forget, it was some really ignorant, it was lefty, but it was actually like, it was tacitly laughing at this person for being fat and for being in a walker. Yeah. And like, I hadn't really thought of it because I was just like, oh, haha, yeah, Americans and they're anti-healthcare, but they need it kind of. And that was what it was. And this was grade 12 me. I think I've improved, but this because someone called me out, right? Like someone literally, like a Facebook friend of mine who I think they actually deleted me over this. So or maybe not, I can't remember what happened with that, but like, they were just like, fuck that. Like, what the fuck why did you post this? This is fatphobic. And I was trying to be all defensive at first. And like, they were like, no, that's not fucking, and I don't like, you know, I was just like, that had to force me to think about it super fast compared to like, I think it would have taken me many more years to like realize that those attitudes were like wrong and what they actually represented if it hadn't been for this person saying it outright like that and really calling me to task, because I wouldn't have taken it as seriously. I think if someone who I thought was cool, who's like an activist, hadn't been like, what you did is fucked up, like what you posted is a fucked up thing, like that is fatphobic, that is ableist, like you're literally like it's literally making fun of people's bodies and their medical conditions. And I hadn't even thought about that. And that was like, but that changed so much of how I thought in an instant. And I researched it and I learned. And that's like, if someone's not willing to do that, then it's like, were they really gonna listen?
A lot of us hate the word ally because of who usually uses it. But like, really, that's a testament. If you're not even walking towards allyship if you haven't gone through that yet.
Yeah.
You're gonna fuck up.
Been called to account and had to like, and actually then learn from that. Then like, there's a lot you're gonna be missing, I think, right? Because no one is done. No one's like done learning,
and no one has to like sacrifice their safe space to make you feel comfortable in the fucked up shit you do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's like you've made them unsafe. You've made other people unsafe. That's like
you've made them unsafe.
Sorry, pause for a second.
You were the abuser.
Mm-hmm.
You were the abuser. Your victim doesn't need to let you heal from your abuse that you were causing to them.
Like that is something to do in your own time, but you have they owe you nothing. Like
they owe you nothing.
And so like I am very grateful to even have been given a call out instead of just like, okay, well, fuck her, she's not going to learn. Like that is being called out on something is a sign that someone actually thinks you're worth telling.
Thinks you're worth it.
Fucked up, right? Because like they wouldn't even tell you otherwise. They'd just be like, this person is a write-off.
No.
So I think people
might tell everybody else.
But like, especially with race, like white people get so upset if they're called racist or told something they did was racist. But it's like the fact that a person of color is telling you that, and it's often a person of color telling them, that is a sign right there that someone is actually valuing you enough to think that you would learn from this and listen instead of just continuing to be a racist.
And so the first thing is that was racist.
Yeah.
Blah, 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 blah. I'm not a bad person. I'm not a racist.
Not
Didn't say you were yet, but you just proved it.
yeah,
Thanks.
exactly. You did a racist thing is different than you are a racist, but also, I mean, everyone is like every single one of us, including racialized people, have internalized white supremacy, and we're going to spend our lifetimes unpacking them. We still, and even if it's not that, it's colorism and texturism and all these, like we still have our own shit to unpack. And so like,
Which is all
white
part of
people to
white
think they
supremacy.
don't, for white people to think they don't
Yeah.
have to unpack white supremacy when we have to,
Yeah.
it's like,
We're unpacking so much white supremacy that we have been taught to enact on each other and ourselves.
Yes. Yeah.
So white people, yeah.
like how it's just shocking that you could think
We
you're not.
learned from having
like-
you as friends and neighbors and teachers how to enact this white supremacy on ourselves
Yeah, exactly. So
because
it's like,
you taught us this.
I just like, it's shocking that you could think that you could grow up in this world that is white supremacist and then not be touched by that you could be some bastion of awareness and race neutrality, which is not even anti-racist. So I'm like, but they think that they can be untouched by the conditions of white supremacy.
It's
that
so
their
despicable.
souls will not be touched by it when you're literally like your souls are doused in blood.
Neutrality makes me as angry as pacifism, which says I don't value you enough to stand up for you. And neutrality just says like, these differences are right up in my face, but I'm going to pretend it's not real because it makes me more comfortable. So please keep me comfortable by pretending it's not real.
Yes, exactly. And yeah,
but I'm your ally.
Yeah. And even people of color enact that, as I said, like I lost my former best friend, one of my best friends, not Marion. Marion's great, but a former best friend of mine.
Hey, Marion.
And because I wouldn't denounce the use of violence as a tool to fight injustice and oppression, right? Because they wanted me to say that was wrong, that it was always wrong to be violent, that violence was never the answer. They literally said, the words incremental change is the answer to me. And I was like, no, it isn't. And so they ended our friendship of I think 9 years at the time because of that. But I'm like, they'd always pretended to agree with the things that I'd said, but they hadn't really done, I guess, the learning or the introspection. But they are like racialized, and they're darker skinned than me, and they're facing more racism. But it was just they would not accept that incremental change doesn't solve things, and that you can't, I'm not willing to condemn the tactics that marginalized people use to overthrow their oppressors in any context. I'm not willing to condemn that.
No.
Because I think it's right. I'm not going to lie and say that I believe something I don't to maintain a friendship or to maintain the peace between us, right? So when you call on me to do that, I have to say, no, I don't agree with that. And that was, and so then they walked away, and that's, I guess that was the right thing for them to do in that case, because they weren't able to accept that, and we would not have been able to be compatible in that sense. Because it is an important thing there. If someone can't accept that, then it's we can't really work together at a certain level, which sucks, but yeah.
It is true, because then you can't trust them. They will only be an ally and not an accomplice, and they will probably land you in jail and sell you out because you compromised their white morals, which actually is about this. You compromised their white morals. They will turn you in. You were on the wrong side.
Yes.
Yeah.
I love that card too. That's so beautiful. The purple there is so lovely in the hair. And that one's a really good one. That was one of the weapons ones, right? Yeah. And we talked about that a bit.
Fiber weapons.
Before the thing.
Yeah,
but
so this one,
you explain it. It's your card.
In this one, it's about, compromising their morals to make sure you survive their oppression. And don't let that pull you down. That's what they want. Some tarot cards for me really impart those white ideas and morals and ethics that pull us down, keep us polite, keep us suppressed, keep us pacified. And so
Yeah. So I think
Yeah,
so
we have
much of it
cards.
is, sorry, I say like I think so much of like I think so much of the values of whiteness are just about like keeping the peace, right? And about like not really acknowledging problems and just not causing unrest and not being violent. But of course the state is entitled to use
Yeah.
violence against us. But we're supposed to, and so like anything that disrupts that is like it's demonized, but it's like that's because your morals are based on like again on legality and on comfort as opposed to on justice, right? And that's like
Yeah.
justice doesn't always look like
Well,
legal.
it doesn't. So let's talk
Never.
about 11 as justice as your favorite card to wrap it up, because we're at
Yeah.
about an hour.
Yeah, oh, true. Yes.
Because the thing about doing these with like all my friends is it makes it you know, naturally
Go
long.
off topic, right? 'Cause we're just like, oh my god, remember when this happened?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, or dive into places. So I'm gonna keep looking for a more traditional justice card and hold these in frame. And if you can talk about like this, why this is your favorite card, you know, the Eurocentric issues with justice cards, and how you like to frame them for yourself when you see them, stuff like that.
I guess like my issue is so I don't know a lot about tarot, I gotta admit, but like I like, I like just the idea of justice in general and of like, but so much of it is about like balance and order and stuff. And I don't think that's what justice is to me, right? Like I think that like balance in an unbalanced world, and it is unbalanced because it's destroying the environment, it's destroyed like this society is inherently unbalanced. But so balance in this is not balance in terms of like the actual world. It's only balance according to this system, right? And that's that literally the symbol of it being like that statue of the justice with the scales, the symbol of the courts now, right? Which are a place
and this is a beautiful one. It's from Kaleidodope Tarot, and justice is actually a black
I like that
face and body in this, but anyway,
still it's like still the idea, the original.
I'm gonna just plug that, it's awesome. But let's get to justice.
Yeah, so I think for me, like justice looks absolutely nothing like, and it really shocks me. I always forget that people do believe in like that they believe that justice is derived from the law. So like I know after like the Chauvin case, like when he did get convicted, so many people were saying justice has been served. But that's one cop out of the 4 who were part of this, who the ones who stood by, the ones who helped. Then and those are 4 cops out of all the cops doing that shit. And then like this system like that justice is not justice because it doesn't bring back the person who's been killed. It doesn't actually, what is lost can't be replaced by that justice. And that justice is not going to act. And actually there were even cops saying that the Derek Chauvin ruling made it easier for them because now they don't need to do as much to change themselves because people are more comfortable now that there's been justice served. So yeah, my idea of justice has absolutely nothing to do with the legal system. I don't think justice can ever be derived through that. I'm more, my justice would be social justice, would be like the justice of the people fighting back, rising up, the justice of the land being reclaimed, the justice of no longer engaging in environmental degradation like that. So I think that these cards, the idea of rising up, and I think is someone painting that there with rise up, or is that like, is it graffiti?
Yeah, they are.
Yeah, I love that because
the graffiti.
And that's perfect for it because that act right there is like an act that harms no one and that gets the message out that is important and yet is criminalized, right? And I remember in Kingston, we were even getting in trouble for spray chalk and for just normal chalk as well as it being graffiti, right? Because because the messages embarrassed Queens because we put the message up everywhere how racist Queens was. And that's the kind of thing like that's not an act that harmed anyone. That's not an act that threatened anyone, although they called some of the graffiti threatening. But it's not, and yet they will still be seen as criminal just because it causes embarrassment to the system. It exposes something of the system, right? So I think that the fact that it is graffiti here is very cool. Like, I think that was a very cool touch on the card.
Yeah.
And then
There
like,
was some thought to a broken window, but yeah.
I love that too. Oh God, and our particular broken window story was a whole thing
Yeah.
as well, but that's we won't get into that, but that's
Yeah, I don't actually have time. I'm gonna
Yeah.
have to let you go.
Oh, that's fair,
But
yeah.
this was really awesome
Yeah.
and I quite enjoyed it. And
too.
you know, by the time this is posted, people are going to be able to order the deck on Kickstarter.
In
Yeah.
order.
So which will be in the, you know, in the morning for you.
Yeah.
Pre-launch should happen. Maybe I might have launched by accident. I have to go figure it out.
That's fair. I have no idea how to do that, but good luck.
Technology. Yeah. All right. If I get a hold of you today and be like, oh my God, I need mass advertising all of a sudden, just because
That's
I
because it
accidentally
launched.
pre-launched.
So the launch is
Yeah,
tomorrow,
yeah.
right? Yeah. That's awesome.
So there's pre-launch tomorrow or launch. It depends how
Yeah,
massively I messed up. One or the other.
One of them will happen.
It will be awesome.
That's so cool. All right, thank you so much for having me for this. Like, this was really cool. We just need to hang out more. This was really good talking to you. Like, it's very good vibes.
I know, and I miss everybody, but like I got really busy this year.
That's fair.
In
Yeah.
art. Yeah, which
that's so
is
cool. Though. I love that you've been doing that.
And
yeah, I've been like,
yeah,
I've not even been busy, but just lying around, not talking to people, but very much in that. But I'm trying to get more out there again, and actually, you know, like it's hard with the pandemic, right? But I'm like, just because it makes it easy to just lie around and like, you know, there's very little you can do like we would have prior to the pandemic, but it doesn't mean I can't still be doing stuff as an activist. So that's one good thing. And that's I've seen some amazing activism during this pandemic in Hamilton, like a lot of really incredible stuff, mostly from Black people, which has been really cool. Anyway, sorry, so I'm gonna let you go because I know you gotta go. But it was so good chatting.
I know we could do another hour, but
no.
See you later.
We could talk forever. We could talk.
I know.
So much to say, right? Anyway.
Sometimes it's infamous.
Yes, the infamous Evelyna. All right.